Honorable Speaker, I beg to report that the Committee of the Whole has considered the County Allocation of Revenue Bills, Senate Bills number 16 of 2023, and 6 leave to sit again tomorrow.
I now invite the mover. The mover of this bill, County Allocation of Revenue Bill.
Madam Speaker, I beg to move that the House do agree with the committee on the said report. And I do request my senior colleague, Boni Halwale, to second.
Honorable Speaker, I rise to second the motion as moved.
Honorable Senators, I propose the question that the House do agree with the committee in the said report. I now put the question that the House do agree with the committee in the said report. As many as are of that opinion say aye. As many as are of contrary opinion say nay. The ayes have it. I now invite the chairperson to report on preservation of human dignity and enforcement of economic and social rights bill 2022. Senator Kathy Moma.
Honorable Speaker, I beg to report progress that the Committee of the Whole has considered the preservation of human dignity and enforcement of economic and social rights bill, Senate Bills number 7 of 2022, and 6 leave to sit again tomorrow.
I now invite the mover of this motion, Senator Mungatana, to proceed and move.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Madam Speaker, Honorable Speaker, I beg to move that the House do agree with the committee in its said report and call upon the Honorable Senator Boni Halwale to second. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise to second this motion as moved. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Halwale. Honorable Senators, I now put the question that I now propose the question that the Committee of the Whole do report progress on its consideration of the preservation of the human dignity and enforcement of economic and social rights bill, Senate Bills number 7 of 2022, and seek leave to sit again tomorrow. As many as are of that opinion say aye. As many as are of a contrary opinion say nay. The ayes have it. Honorable Senators, the House now resumes the normal business, and I will request the clerk to call the next order.
Order number 12, the Agricultural and Livestock Extension Services Bill, Senate Bills number 12 of 2022, second reading.
Senator Tabitha Mutinda.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I rise pursuant to the provision of the Standing Order 146 of the Senate that the Agricultural and Livestock Extension Services Bill number 12/2022 now be read a second time. Madam Speaker, first I want to start by thanking the members of the Committee of Agriculture for having time to look at the bill and also doing public participation on the bill. Also to thank the clerk and the speaker for the facilitation of the development of this bill. not forgetting the legal team led by none other than Dr. Okello. I do really appreciate to this level. Madam Speaker, I would want to start by stating the principal objective of this bill is to provide development and provision of agriculture and livestock services. Currently, there is no legislation providing for this important aspect, Madam Speaker. Before I delve into the content of this important bill, Madam Speaker, I'd like to give some brief background information on why the provision of extension services is very, very key to our country at this particular moment, noting that agriculture is a devolved function. Madam Speaker, the agricultural sector provides 80% of Kenya's population, most of whom are subsistence farmers in the rural areas. The sector contributes to about 24% of the GDP and another 25% indirectly to the sector. It accounts to about 65% on the country's export earnings. Madam Speaker, a well-functioning extension services operated by the public and the private sector is one of the critical inputs that is really required for increased agricultural output and also livestock. Farming is into modern and commercial farming will be able to make us attain a food security in the country, and also is going to improve the income and also reduce poverty in the different regions of our country. For the last 10 years, Madam Speaker, of devolution, agriculture and livestock extension services have received passive attention, and it is at this particular moment that it is a very key and significant area that this gap needs to be narrowed so as to be able to achieve maximum agricultural and livestock productivity in our country. Extension services, Madam Speaker, have a very significant role, and they range from, as I've stated earlier, boosting the food security, enhancing rural livelihoods, and indeed, these services have numerous benefits to the farmers, Madam Speaker. Agriculture is a primary source of income. In this regard, the extension services play a very key role to increase productivity and quality of crops and livestock. Farmers also will earn more money, which will turn will also be able to raise the living standards of the different farmers in the different regions in this country. From the foregoing, it is also very much important, Madam Speaker, to be able to note that there is need to have a legislative framework that is going to provide a very critical sector that has direct impact on agriculture productivity of the country and hence livelihoods for the different Kenyans, Madam Speaker. With your permission, I also request I proceed on the various provisions of the bill. Let me start by saying that Clause 3 of the bill, Madam Speaker, provides the key objectives of the bill, which are to foster coordination and collaboration in extension services research among the national government, the county government. As I've said, it's a devolved function, non-government organizations. We have different organizations like FAO, we have KEFIS, we have KEMRI, and different others, Madam Speaker. The learning institutions, Madam Speaker, research bodies, and other state actors. The bill is also going to promote and generate high income for farmers and traders through increased production and sourcing of competitive markets. Markets is a very key factor, Madam Speaker, because it is in this part that this bill is going to provide and to ensure that the local products that we continue farming are going to be able to have direct market to the users, and are going to reduce what for a long time has been a cartel group of brokers that come in between the hard work of the farmers that they've been able to do. And through a proper market strategies, and this bill being able to facilitate that the products are able to have a good market share, then it's an area that will be able to ensure that there's increased income and revenues. Further, Madam Speaker, the bill also provides for an adoption of a sector-wide approach in provision services which enable appropriate quality services. Quality services is a key factor to note because you realize that it is one thing, Madam Speaker, to be able to decide that someone is doing farming, but the technical know-how, the skills that are required to be able to ensure that this particular commodity, this particular cash crop is going to have the yields that are required as the standards of the different byproducts like the fertilizers that are going to be put in place, services like looking at the pH levels of the different type of soils in those particular regions. So this bill is going to guide because it's going to provide technical expertise who are versed in this area, and hence they are going to give guidance to the different farmers so as to be able to improve the quality level of the different cash crops. The upshot of this is higher productivity, increased income, and better standard of living, as I had earlier said. Madam Speaker, according to the Food Agriculture Organization, agriculture research and extension systems are central to unlock the potential of agriculture innovation and achieve sustainable development goals. Agriculture research and extension advisory services are essential to increase productivity and promote sustainable agricultural growth. There are different ways that the different expertise will be able, who are going to be in place to be able to use innovative methodologies, putting in mind we are in 2023, whereby technology has changed. And it is through these advanced methodologies, advanced and improved different byproducts that are going to be able to help improve maximum production and germination of the different cash crops that are going to be improved by ensuring we have the right bodies and expertise to be able to give guidance to the farmers at all levels and at all regions. Clause 6, Madam Speaker, of the bill establishes an extension services body, a corporate whose function are to provide for, which is provided under Clause 8, enhancing competitiveness of agriculture food security in Kenya, and also increasing long-term productivity for agriculture food, maintaining, enhancing natural resources based on the counties, different counties, depending on the products that are really in these different regions, because different regions have got different products, natural resources, and also different regions have different output of cash crops. Like in the Rift Valley region, you'll find that cash crops like tea are very well in these particular regions. Madam Speaker, the service also will develop new users and new products of agricultural commodities, because remember, this, the focus of this bill is to improve also on the different ways of adding value to the different agricultural products, so that even the market itself, it's wide in terms of different products. Madam Speaker, in performing its function, the service will also encourage the use of information and technology. That is the ICT level. Madam Speaker, in this ICT, I want to state that there is going to be a database for all the farmers in these particular regions, all the information regarding the type of crops that they'll be farming, the type of fertilizer that they need, and all the guidance that is needed. So the technology in terms of ICT will be able to ensure that there's continuous communication. Unlike earlier on, when we used to have, quite a number of years ago, we used to have extension services officers who at some point are no longer there. And since we are at a digital advanced level, and as you know, the Ministry of ICT is also working on digital hubs. So these are things that will also be able to be trained, and our data, our farmers will be able to have, a data whereby information is going to be remitted on time. The world is rapidly also moving to information technology, and so through this bill, the agricultural sector is expected to take advantage and develop to fill to the void the traditional extension strategies that used to be used, the old school ones, Madam Speaker. The ICT has the potential to respond to a number of challenges that confront the extension services sector. Madam Speaker, further, the service is tasked with developing and coordinating intergovernmental relation mechanisms by ensuring that they deliver services related to the extension services. Let me state, Mr. Speaker, that Clause 917 of the bill provides a management of service, which is vested on a board of directors. And I would like just to state and touch on it, which talks about a chairperson who shall be appointed by the cabinet secretary. Also, a personal principal secretary responsible for matters relating to agriculture, a principal secretary for matters relating to livestock, 2 persons with knowledge and expertise in the field of extension nominated by the Council of Governors. Remember, as I've said earlier, agriculture is a devolved function, and so the county governments play a very key role in this particular bill. 1 person representing National Farm or Produce Organization nominated by the Council of County Governors, 1 person representing Kenya Agriculture and Livestock Research Organization nominated by the organization, and 1 member representing National Organization Agriculture Service Providers. A chief executive officer also will be placed, and this executive officer will shall also be the secretary to the board and shall be responsible for the day-to-day running of the business. Like any organization, he will be the manager and also will be appointed for a term of 5 years, which is still renewable only for a maximum of another just 1 term, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, agriculture, including crops and animal husbandry, is a devolved function, as I said. And so Clause 26 sets out the role of the county governments, which is also stated and included. Just to mention a few, it will to implement the national government policy and standards relating to the extension services providers. And this is a very key part, because without these standards, then it lacks the guidance on what is supposed to be achieved, what is the outcome, and all that. Regulate and promote extension services within the respective counties, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, collect and disseminate information to the extension services. What is this information? The information that is required by the farmers, so as to ensure there is value and there is maximum output yield on the different crops. And also the livestock. Coordinate the activities of person and organization and any other association within the field of extension services. Facilitate the access of players in the extension service sector to such resources of financial support as may be necessary. Mr. Speaker, Clause 26 obligates the County Executive Committee member in charge of agriculture to ensure that the county government fulfills its obligation under the Act by performing several tasks. Just to name a few: consider applications for the permits and licenses, maintain an up-to-date register for extension service providers in that particular county to the ward level. These services are actually up to the ward level. Provide training on extension service programs and disseminate. Which programs are we talking about? We are talking on the skills, the know-how, what quantities are needed for the different fertilizer, the type of seed that should be used that will be able to match with the type of soil depending on that particular region. Provide training, as I've said. Technical know-how is very important. Socioeconomic development strategies also. Mr. Speaker, for the service to be able to execute its mandate, Clause 37 of the bill does provide that fund service shall consist of monies appropriated by Parliament. Monies and assets may accrue or vest in the board, and donations, grants, loans. This board is able to receive different funding so as to be able to ensure that they offer the services to the farmers, as I stated earlier. Clause 32 also empowers the county government to enact county-specific legislation that can be able to set out the criteria for registering extension service providers within the respective county, Mr. Speaker. Criteria for issuance of licenses to the applicants within the respective county, process and determination of the application of registration of issuance of the licenses. Mr. Speaker, as I wind up on this, I want to really state that extension officers, as I've said earlier, they had existed, and then it came at a time then they are not. And I'm acknowledging that because some of our members, even when we used to share and talk about this bill, they mentioned that they had relatives who used to be extension officers, who used to go down to the ground, even as for example, there's an issue of a livestock that had, there was a crisis. There could be, just a phone call away, and some of these things were able to be sorted. So some of some of the members have been able to enjoy the benefits of having extension of officers up to the, what we call mashinani level. And so it is a very critical and important, because, as I stated earlier, especially on the issue of marketing, increasing the market share for our products. You find that especially commodities that we export, there's a lot of brokerage in between. And so farmers are doing the hard work, they are sweating, going to all extents to ensure they have the product from the farm. But where are the fruits of these particular farmers? It becomes a challenge. It becomes so demotivating in such a way that then where is the morale? You know, where is also the revenue, maximization of the revenue that we need to collect in this country? Then it becomes a challenge. But when we have qualified, competent, trained experts with technical know-how of different agricultural sector, ranging from the agricultural byproducts in terms of the food, and also on the livestock sector, we are going to improve our agriculture. Improving our agriculture ensures that we also improve food security in this country. We increase jobs, we increase the different staple foods. Mr. Speaker, you'll agree with me whereby yes, at this time we have difficult economic moments. And you realize that people have talked about unga. It's like the only product that we have in this country is none other than the way we call it in our Kenyan language, we call it ugali. It is the only product that, you know, we can only discuss. It is the high time, through even these extension officers, these are expertise who are able to advise on the different staple foods that we can be able to grow in our beautiful countries. Different areas like the cash crops like cassava, arrowroots. Those are products that when germinated, then they can be improved to give us different products. We have, Mr. Speaker, even flour from coconut, okay, that if it is from the coast region, when this product is actually given the investment that it deserves, then we are able to have different byproducts so that we stop narrowing to one particular product for so long, as much as yet it's a bigger percentage, but it's the high time we diversify in terms of ensuring we have different products in this country. And through that also, the issue of job will also be created through these different officers that will be in place. And with those few remarks, Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that the Agriculture and Livestock Extension Service Bill 2022 now be read a second time and call upon my senior senator, Senator Cheryl Guy, to second. Thank you.
Senator Cheryl Guy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. I don't know why Senator Manzo is doubting my seniority and ranking member of this House. And he can easily consult our senior youth, Senator Uhuru Odinga, to confirm. So, Speaker, from the onset, I want to congratulate Senator Mutinda for this wonderful bill. I know sometimes the member of delegation of Nairobi, and many people would think that somebody from Nairobi would not be interested with agriculture. But I'm happy she's the first among the equals. She has led us, Mr. Speaker, on this issue of agriculture, which is largely counties that come from the many areas, including where I come from, Nandi County, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, I want to commend her and congratulate her because she's first cutting a niche in the legislative world and in the issue of parliamentary procedures in this republic. And I think she is also a trailblazer. I can see there are a number of girls on the public gallery of women leadership in this country. And I know she's an inspiration to many young students who are following the proceedings from the Speaker's gallery. So, Speaker, the issue of agriculture and extension services, when most of us were growing up, we used to see people with motorbikes, the famous ones. I see that one has been given Nga officers or chiefs, Mr. Speaker. We used, when we were young boys, taking care of cows, going to farm maize, because largely where I come from, Nandi County, Mr. Speaker, is a county where we deal with coffee, sugarcane, milk, the dairy sector, issues of tea, issues of maize, and therefore, as we were growing, we used to see these people come around with the motorbikes that were white, and trying and look at the cows, Mr. Speaker. You see your father or your mother calling them, Mr. Speaker, to find out when they are coming. I think this is one of the serious failures of the county governments. We should not even be putting a legislation. Agriculture function is devolved. We should have expected even county governments to have done this without legislation, Mr. Speaker, because this is how we improve the turnover. I'm happy that this, in the current administration, the president is very keen on food security. And food security will go in supervising and ensuring there is quality, Mr. Speaker, in terms of production. And when you talk about technology, Mr. Speaker, we want, and this is the food security. We have seen government, Mr. Speaker, talking about the issue of food security, subsidized fertilizer. Mr. Speaker, I can confirm to this House, to many of my friends who are asking about the unga prices and the flour prices, if you give us 3 to 4 months, we can assure the people who are carrying the sufurias in their heads will need to bring them down and take it to their jiko, because in the next 5 to 6 months, Mr. Speaker, we'll be able to produce enough maize and ensure there is proper unga for each and every Kenyan, because the government ensured under President William RUTO to reduce the price of the fertilizer from 7,000, Mr. Speaker, to now 2,500 to 3,000, and ensure each and every farmer. And I'm happy I saw the uptake of subsidized fertilizer has improved greatly. And those are challenges, Mr. Speaker. I know there is a song by Burning Spear, Mr. Speaker, that talks about that we are not stupid. It says, hey, hey, hey. They told us, Mr. Speaker, we want to ensure that things, paraphrasing the reggae song by Burning Spear, called Not Stupid, or they sing, hey, hey, hey. I want to assure the country, under this leadership of President William Ruto, there will be good things. Life will become better in the next few years, as the singer Burning Spear in that reggae song said, Mr. Speaker. And that is what we want to build in terms of food security. Mr. Speaker, the issue of research and extension service is very critical. We have, and I'm looking at the possibility of commingling, because we have CALRO, we have by extent Kemri, or Kemri does other research, we have KEFIS, we have AFA. So, Speaker, I know Senator Manso had a lot of discussion about AFA, Agricultural Food Authority, in the last session. Mr. Speaker, we need to commingle and bring together so that we are able to do research and transfer of technology, so that when we are planting maize, you know where I come from, there is what we call 6 choge, where you get the best maize and hang in your store and use to plant. We want Kenya seed, Mr. Speaker, to give us the best variety. Mr. Speaker, you have to appreciate that climate change is possible. The country just moved back from one of the worst droughts that we have ever seen in history. How do we get better seeds, better hybrid in terms of maize, where we are planting that can adapt to the changing, ravaging effects of climate change? Mr. Speaker, we are now planting purple tea, including Bomet, where you come from, Kericho and South Rift, and also Mount Kenya, where they plant tea, Mr. Speaker. We are now planting purple tea. Is it the best in the market? Is it of good quality, Mr. Speaker? There are people like Okia Mutata who are planting cotton, Mr. Speaker. We need to get the best seed. And this research and technology must be found, Mr. Speaker, and facilitated to ensure that. Mr. Speaker, the issue of technology, when I speak about it, we have mixed feelings. Because under International Labour Organization Charter, Mr. Speaker, the issue of tea plucking machines is the issue in the South and North Rift, Mr. Speaker. And I know your county has been devastatingly affected, and also Kericho, we saw a bit of discomfort because of, Mr. Speaker, in as much as we welcome the use of technology in agriculture, that one should not come to disenfranchise our young people from accessing jobs. Mr. Speaker, I would have expected that at least 30% of job opportunities, or 30% should go to the machines, and 70%, because when you go to South Rift, when you go to Nandils, and part of Tindred, where multinational companies are, most of my young people and many young, even old, are idle, Mr. Speaker, because the now tea plucking machines have taken over, Mr. Speaker. And in fact, tea plucking machines are worst because they cut everything, including chameleon, everything. So the quality of even tea in the processing, Mr. Speaker, is affecting. And that is why when some people drink tea, sometimes they might end up getting intoxicated because those tea plucking machines, Mr. Speaker, is also affecting because they cut everything, chameleon, all the flies, and like when you are plucking machines, plucking using by hand, Mr. Speaker. I want to appeal to the Minister of Agriculture, the Minister of Labor, to look about tea plucking machines in our tea estates, Mr. Speaker. In fact, the introduction of tea plucking machines has affected the intermarrying, especially where I come from. We used to have people coming from Vihiga to come and work in our tea estates, people coming from Kisumu, from Busia, and they meet with people from Nandi. And you can imagine the hybrid of people coming from Vihiga and the people coming from Nandi, which is the best hybrid that we can have as a country. So it has a social net effect. Apart from the issue of access to labor as per Article 41, it also has a net effect, Mr. Speaker, in terms of ensuring. So I want to call upon that the issue of tea plucking machines, especially in North and South Rift, must be relooked at, Mr. Speaker. We must relook. Even Mount Elgon in Bungoma County, Mr. Speaker, and part of Bungoma County, they also have tea. So this is not an issue that we talk, and Mr. Speaker, we don't want, I know the Ministry of Interior are doing the investigations, which is okay, but we should not muscle leaders from speaking about the issue of tea plucking machines. Mr. Speaker, we need to tell the people who are owners of multinational, even if they are in London, even if they are powerful, even if who they are, they cannot muscle and intimidate leadership from speaking against tea plucking machines taking the jobs of our young people and men, Mr. Speaker. We shall speak truth, Mr. Speaker. We want to ask the Interior Ministry, and Professor Kithure Kindiki is my very good friend and my elder brother, that this is not an issue of security. This is a societal matter, Mr. Speaker. How do you feel when you walk to Chepkunyuk Trading Center, Imakis Trading Center, Nandil's Town, Mr. Speaker, Kapchorwa, Tereno, Mr. Speaker, Maraba Trading Center, and you get many young people idle who 6 months, 1 year ago used to go and pluck tea and get something, Mr. Speaker. Many families, Mr. Speaker, are breaking down because the women of today, if you don't go with something in the evening, Mr. Speaker, and there is a Kipsiki song that says you must have something to open the door with it. I don't want to say because the standing orders does not allow. You must, Mr. Speaker, you must at least have what we call selele, or the bag to open the door with it. And you know, it's also the door to the house and the door to other things as the night progresses. So, Mr. Speaker, we must, as a country, that it is also affecting the issue of family. It is breaking down the family. It is affecting dignity and respect of men. Because as a man, when you longer provide, Mr. Speaker, there is what we call in our region called kiptindinos, will come to our houses, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, I think this issue of tea plucking machines, Agriculture Committee, I'm happy Senator Manzo, please kindly react to this issue of tea plucking machines through the office of the Speaker, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the third and final point, Mr. Speaker, is on the issue of the exchange of technology. I want to agree that let us transfer technology, improve hybrid. Kenya Seed is one of them. I know Senator Mutinda has mentioned about KFIS and AFA. Let us also, I'm told Kenya Seed is struggling. They don't have enough budget, Mr. Speaker, to do research in terms only of not a maize seed, potato seed in Nyandarua, any other form of seed, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Essie, what is your intervention?
Mr. Speaker, the senior member of the Senate, Senator Cherargei, is using terms which are strange to this House. What is Kiptindinyo and Selele? Please bring that to the attention of members so that we flow with your seconding of this bill. Thank you.
Senator Cherargei, kindly clarify to the Honorable Senator what term you use.
My apologies, Mr. Speaker. I'm told in Kikamba, Kiptindinya means a different thing. In where I come from, where you come from, South Rift and North Rift, is the men who come prowling around your homestead, Mr. Speaker, and they are found around swamps. So I think that's the explanation. On the issue of Selele is the bag. This one, I know they have banned the polythene bags in the country, where when you want your wife to open the door very quickly, especially where I come from and South Rift, you just ensure it It is conquering the door so that you can go in very fast.
Senator,
No, sorry
be
for using
mindful
that,
about your language.
opening the door. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Senator Esther. I know Senator Esther Ikunyuri also comes from the region where they also plant tea, Nyamira and Kisii counties, and they also have a challenge of tea plucking machines. Mr. Speaker, the fourth point that I wanted to make, the issue of transfer of technology is very important. Mr. Speaker, an issue of nutrition, even as we make sure food is being processed and given out, Mr. Speaker, this food is very important to have nutritional value. Mr. Speaker, are you aware that majority, where I even come from, people are suffering with malnutrition in this country? Even, I don't want to say in this house because somebody can say I'm casting aspersions to colleague. Are you aware most Kenyans are malnutrition because you get somebody eating ugali and viazi, potatoes. That's carbohydrates. And they maybe add skuma. So, Speaker, we need to diversify in terms of eating to improve on the nutritional value that all of us have, Mr. Speaker. So the issue of transfer of technology will even improve the hybrid and even the nutritional value that will go up. The fifth point, Mr. Speaker, I don't want to go to the issue of board of directors and constitution of the board, Mr. Speaker, because these are just straightforward. I want just to go to quickly the last 2 points on the issue of role of county governments, Mr. Speaker. I think, Mr. Speaker, and you know, I said last time that there is a conversation that health should be brought back to Nairobi. Counties are letting us down. When the NAGRIC, and I know the Agriculture Committee knows this, National Agricultural Inclusive Growth Project, has become a success in most counties. But some of the counties, Mr. Speaker, took this donor money, decided to buy fingerlings, and take it to a flowing river in some particular county. I don't want to mention the county, because I don't want when I want to live, and just go and put in fingerlings, Mr. Speaker. The issue of NARIC, you have seen even governors giving out eggs and chicks to even people who do not have capacity, Mr. Speaker. Because when you give out these broiler chicks, there is a way, there is an environment they must stay with it so that they grow, Mr. Speaker. So this issue of NAGRIC has been abused, and I want to challenge Agriculture Committee. Can you do audits, Mr. Speaker, about this issue of NARIC and conditional grants, because agriculture gets a lot of money, Mr. Speaker. In Nandi, the issue of NARIC was a facade. I remember in Kabiyet at Kamasai, Mr. Speaker, there was a project that was worth billions of shillings of constructing a dam, a temporary dam, Mr. Speaker, in Kamasai, in Kabiyet Ward in Mosab sub-county, Mr. Speaker. This money was diverted, Mr. Speaker, and in NARIC proposal, it had been taken to ensure that there is water for the people of Kabiyet Ward in Kamasai, Mr. Speaker, in Mosab sub-county in Nandi County. So this one was being used. I saw they sometimes bought, Mr. Speaker, they used to donate what we call coffee seedlings at NARIC. And then they go out there and give a farmer only 5 seedlings of coffee. What will it do? Or 2? You know, I always get down with this. I don't know whether these miracles happen only in Nandi County or in other counties. Because my county is unique in doing things opposite and in the wrong direction, Mr. Speaker. So I hope the issue of NARIC should be factored in and audit, Mr. Speaker. The role of the county should be able to be proactive, because Senator Mutinda has tried to even be prescriptive. Because counties have failed. They don't have extension officers. If you ask our governor, I thought extension officers should be used even to collect data. Because it is easier to collect data through extension officers as opposed to ward administrators, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, the training, I agree, Mr. Speaker, on the aspect of the training and ensuring that the counties are held accountable, Mr. Speaker. Even I want to challenge people who will engage senators, governors tomorrow. Council of Governors and the Senate tomorrow, Mr. Speaker, between Friday and Sunday. Please, the issue of agriculture, you must bring it on the table. It's one of the key devolved functions. Outside health, the issue of agriculture, Mr. Speaker. I want to laud the governor of West Pokot. He had invited me to preside over handing of seeds that were worth 74 million in West Pokot in Makutano Stadium, Mr. Speaker. He was able to identify families and give them seeds and fertilizer to plant. Mr. Speaker, that is the spirit we want to see in counties, because you should show agriculture works. You should know, the reason there is conversation of having health being brought back to Nairobi. It's because it doesn't work in the villages. There are no drugs. People are dying because of normal diseases, ignorance. Mr. Speaker, for example, Maraba Sub-County Hospital, there is a young man who got a border accident. He was taken. They delayed in attending him. He unfortunately passed on, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in the same facility, somewhere in Nandi, I don't want to mention the place, a young lady went to do diagnosis, or not diagnosis, scanning. She was expecting. And the officer in charge told her that you are expecting twins. The young lady, Mr. Speaker, prepared that she will be getting twins. When it came to the time of giving birth, she only got one child, Mr. Speaker, gave birth to one child. It is like a case where you are having a microscope in some Uganda hospital. They thought the person had the cockroach. Unfortunately, they didn't know that the microscope was the one with the cockroach. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, that is what is happening. And I told that young lady, you should demand that the county give you the other baby, because if they say they were two and you got one, then it is very hard. In closing remarks, Mr. Speaker, I think this is the best bill. Us who come from agricultural growing areas, we want to thank Senator Mutinda for this wonderful bill. We are proud of her, Mr. Speaker. I know I didn't cut on the dairy. Dairy is one also of the key areas that we need to look about the technology, improving the hybrid, ensuring that we give the necessary dairy that comes in, Mr. Speaker. In the words of the burning spear, in Not Stupid, the Hey Hey song, things will be better in fullness of time. Mr. Speaker, I second the bill and congratulate the Senator.
Honorable Chair, again, next time you might need to clarify that in where you come from, we do not use the 6th chago for purposes of maize. I propose the question that the Agriculture and Livestock Extension Services Bill, Senate Bills number 12 of 2022, be now read a second time. Honorable members, I can see my dashboard is full of requisitions by members to speak, but before I do that, I have a communication to make. And this is with regards to visiting teachers and students from St. Thomas Kavingoni Secondary School in Makwiny County. In the public gallery, we have 145 students accompanied by 9 teachers from St. Thomas Kavingoni Secondary School in Makwiny County who are in the Senate on an education tour. Honorable Senators, in our usual tradition of receiving and welcoming visitors to Parliament, I extend a warm welcome to them and, on behalf of the Senate and on my own behalf, wish them a fruitful visit. I thank you. I know this is Honorable Senator Manzo's county, and I will give you under 1 minute to welcome them.
Yes, unfortunately, I'm told they are now waiting for me outside, and there's a member of the agriculture team. Are they still there? Well, I take this opportunity to welcome them, Mr. Speaker, and I'll be meeting them shortly after this so that I can share with them, and I believe they have benefited from the debate going on agricultural extension services. Mr. Speaker, with your kind permission, because I'm not very far from the board, if it pleases you, if I could make a short contribution on that so that when I leave, I join the students and I don't come back, with your kind permission.
Senator, you welcome them and proceed to contribute to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm actually top in the list. Mr. Speaker, I'm a member of the Committee of Agriculture, and I want to say that recently in one of the agricultural fairs in Makwiny dealing with mangoes, Governor Mutula Kilonzo, who was a senator here, said that he is surprised in the next 2 years, the remaining extension officers will retire. And the country really has no extension officers. And agriculture be a devolved function. Extension officers are so serious and are so important, Mr. Speaker. Recently, we visited Twiga Chemicals, and we were asking the manufacturers of these chemicals, when they sell them, how do the people on ground connect with knowing what they are going to spray, what quantity, and this ordinarily was a job done by extension officers. They will know, because a lot of plants get affected by quite a number of things. And the extension officers are the ones to guide. So a lot of people have been affected by spraying these chemicals, spraying wrong chemicals, getting the produce wrong. Mr. Speaker, in Kenya, the economy of this country is agricultural. That's the backbone of the economy of Kenya. And if we miss out on extension officers from the livestock to growing, plants, cotton, maize, beans, without the guidance, even, the extension officers used to say, what is the spacing? Even today, when we are growing mangoes in Makwiny, you have to space the trees in a certain manner so that they have maximum production. If you don't guide the farmers on that, then they will end up doing a lot of work and ending up in a negative energy. So, Mr. Speaker, the whole idea of extension services is very, very important. It's critical and needs to be acted upon immediately. I know there has been a policy in the country to reduce the boards, but Senator Mutinda calls it services, like the way we have prison services, the way we have police service. This service should be as big as that, Mr. Speaker, so that it is a service across the country which is devolved, and these extension officers can be hired by the counties and also the national government to make sure, depending on the crops growing in that particular county, that the extension officers guiding and directing the farmers on how to best produce in terms of animals or in terms of farming. And therefore, they are very, very important. It's a very important law. I believe it should be concluded as quickly as possible, made into law so that this particular service can be set up and extension officers can be all over the country. I believe the overall agricultural chain, value addition and all that will become much better, will produce more, will have food security, and will export, Mr. Speaker. At the same time, also, the country is looking into irrigation. We need extension service officers who will help the country to deal with the drip irrigation, that sort of modern farming, non-rain fed, agriculture. That's why we are doing the Thwake Dam in Makwiny to be able to give water in Kitui, Makwiny, Kajiado, and Machakos, so that farmers can use it for irrigation as well as construction of Konza City. And it is very, very important. It is stalled, but I'm sure there is top gear activity by Treasury and the Ministry of Water to make sure that the construction of Thwake Dam goes on. But we look forward into extension officers so that when we begin irrigation in the country, and in many parts of Kenya are arsal areas, when we do irrigation, then we need trained up officers who can direct Kenyans in all these specific areas, in animal husbandry, as it used to be, and we will be looking forward into the enactment of this law. Mr. Speaker, thank you, and I support.
Thank you, Senator Manzo. Senator Esther Anyeni Okenyuri.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity. I also want to contribute. First, I commend Senator Tabitha for coming up with this bill. It's a very important aspect, especially for we in the Kenya Kwanza side, whose our priority was support agriculture in our plan that we actually campaigned on. So it's a timely bill. I know the Ministry of Agriculture has had several policies on issues of this agriculture extension services issues, on veterinary, that's when we are talking about livestock. And my concern would be, I hope we are actually going to live to the actions that are stipulated in this bill so that we do not have it as paperwork. Mr. Speaker, growing up as a young girl, I actually would see my grandmother then make a call to a livestock guy who would come and check on the cows and the goats. Today, I no longer see that, now that in as much as I grew up and I'm no longer there. But that was a very key point, and every other person in the village would actually know that we have a an extension, agriculture extension service guy or a livestock extension person. And this is very critical, not just for the counties, even for institutions. Generally, as a country, we need to incorporate this culture of embracing agriculture, starting from way down at the school level and to the counties and in this house. Mr. Speaker, you can even see, today this is a very critical issue, but you see we are very few of us in this house deliberating on this matter. Agriculture is not just about the rural population where majority of us come from. Agriculture is equally urban. You see the Senator Thabitha who is sponsoring this bill is from an urban area, but has the concern of that as we progress, agriculture is also going to be embraced through the technological methods we are actually adopting as a country in the urban areas, where you actually do not have to cultivate on a piece of land, but you can modify other areas to carry your agriculture in. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, having these services will go a long way in addressing county-specific issues. Not all counties engage in one agricultural activity. We have people like, in areas like Kisii, as the senator who spoke earlier, Senator Cherargei, said, we engage in tea farming. We also engage in coffee farming. We do tomatoes. We do pyrethrum in small areas. And when you compare with our colleagues in Central Province who are doing potatoes, so I'm looking forward to this being implemented, being tailored to suit different counties' needs, so that at that lower level we might end up boosting the level of productivity in agriculture, which is also going to improve the living standards of people in those areas. Mr. Speaker, if this was actually working, we would not have young people who are solely doing all their work on TikTok and social media. We would also have young people who are showcasing that they have actually embraced agriculture, whether the traditional ways or the modern ways. They would now showcase that on those social media platforms, other than the content we are actually consuming. And if that does not worry any right-minded thinking Kenyan, then we are heading the right direction. So, Mr. Speaker, this enactment is coming at an opportune time, that we are actually encouraging especially young people and women, because they are the ones who interact with most of these activities in the grassroots level. Like for the women are the ones who are actually going to get firewood, and when they are getting firewood, they are cutting down trees. When they are cutting down trees, they are actually contributing to the effects of climate change that we are seeing. So if we would have had these agriculture extension officers on site, then they would advise the women, if you're cutting down this tree for firewood, please plant a replacement, and we think in your area this works better for your soil. I also want to commend my county of origin. I saw them conducting soil tests so that they support the farmers in whatever plants they want to till this season. And I would be looking forward to other counties, even before this becomes law, because we've had so many policies. We actually don't have to wait for this bill to become law for county governments to actualize some of these proposals, and to be specific, this framework that Senator Mutinda is proposing. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to wind up by saying that Senator Mutinda is doing a very good job among the first-time legislators who've made appearances to this House, and I know she has a bright future, and she actually walks the talk. Thanks, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, Senator Esther. You did not confirm the name of your county of origin when you are appreciating them for what they are doing in soil testing. I did not give you the floor, but Senator Oburu Odinga.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity. Mr. Speaker, I want to thank Senator Mutinda for bringing this very, very important bill. Mr. Speaker, it is always said that agriculture is the backbone of the economy of our country. Mr. Speaker, but when it comes to allocation of resources, agriculture is ignored. Agriculture, even in the declaration which we signed as government, called Malabo Declaration, it was agreed that African countries were going to allocate at least 10% of their budget to agriculture. But in our country, agriculture gets about 4–5%. We have not moved closer to the 10% Malabo Declaration. And yet, we keep on saying that agriculture is the backbone of our economy. How can it be the backbone of our economy, Mr. Speaker, when we don't allocate resources to it? You have to take action, and the action should support what you say. Mr. Speaker, this sector of agriculture feeds our country. And Mr. Speaker, without being self-sufficient in food production, you cannot be independent, because hungry people can never even respect democracy because they are hungry. Mr. Speaker, democracy cannot be nurtured in our country properly if we don't strategize to feed our people the basic thing, which is food. Mr. Speaker, agriculture used to be taken seriously by the colonial authorities. Mr. Speaker, we used to have agricultural officers, extension officers, coming into the villages with uniforms, with the green belts on the soldiers, written AD, Agricultural Department. And these extension officers used to tell people exactly the type of seeds to plant, exactly when to prepare the soil, exactly when to expect the rains, because they were connecting with the weathermen, and they would tell you exactly when, even the date when you should plant. Mr. Speaker, these officers continued up to sometimes during independence. But Mr. Speaker, sir, there's a time when the policy of the government changed, and the government left extension to the private sector. Mr. Speaker, sir, as we are now, as it stands now, if you want a veterinary doctor to come and vaccinate your animal or to give medicine or offer service, you have to pay for it. You have to go and get the agricultural officer to come to your home, and they will charge you for the service you offer. And Mr. Speaker, we are living in a poverty-stricken country. Our people cannot afford the payment for these extension services, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, when an extension officer goes to a farmer is not just doing agriculture. He's not just planting maize, beans, or cassava, or things like that. A farmer is also keeping chicken. The same farmer is also keeping livestock. The same farmer might also be rearing bees. The same farmer might be doing all sorts of things. So if you have a bee extension officer coming tomorrow, the other day a livestock officer is coming, the other day a crops officer for a specific crop, a coffee officer is coming, the other day another one is coming for tea. Mr. Speaker, sir, you confuse this farmer. You confuse this farmer. You need all-round extension officer, one officer who can go and offer all the services necessary for extension, and they need to be trained to dispense knowledge, that knowledge to the farmer, so that one extension officer can be all-rounder and deal with the farmer in all the service or the areas that the farmer is involved with. Mr. Speaker, the most important thing, and I don't see it being addressed by this bill is dealing mainly with the formation of a certain policy board upstairs, somewhere in the national government. But, Mr. Speaker, what is more important, as far as I'm concerned, is the employment of extension officers by the county government. These officers need to be employed by the government, and they need to offer services to the people down there free of charge. Because our people are poor, they cannot afford payment for these services. So, Mr. Speaker, I hope, Madam, you will take into consideration, don't minimize, because I can see you have emphasized more on the board, but the role of the counties, and agriculture is devolved, and the role of the counties is just to establish, you even put it last, which is miscellaneous provisions. That is where you have now said the counties should be offering licensing and so on. But licensing to people who are going to be charging farmers monies which farmers don't have. So licensing, I don't think is going to fundamentally resolve the issue of extension. We need extension because science is also in agriculture now. It is developing. There's a lot of research. But, Mr. Speaker, sir, a lot of research which is advising on the improvement of seeds and even on the insemination services and so on. Mr. Speaker, some of them are rotting in the shelves of research institutions because there is no proper extension to take them down to the farmer who needs them. Mr. Speaker, we really need extension. And we need to take extension seriously, and it must go to the grassroots. We must take it where it belongs, and that is the counties. The counties must employ extension officers so that they can offer that service to the people and take the research on quality and on science, which has made a lot of progress in all these areas, remove them from the shelves and let them go down to the people so that the people who need them can utilize them for to increase productivity so that our people can be self-sufficient both in food production and also get excess which they can sell to improve their standards of living. Mr. Speaker, I don't want to say much more than this, but I hope, Madam, I really like you because you are, first apart from being beautiful, you are also very clever upstairs. And I really respect that. And thank you very much for bringing this bill, and I hope you will take it further. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, Senator Oburu. Senator Tabitha, being a very good student, have taken notes of the comments that you have made. Senator David Wakoli Wafula.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity for me to contribute to this bill that my good friend Tabitha has brought on table. I want to delve into the challenges that our good friends, the extension officers, are undergoing in Bungoma or in the country at large. Mr. Speaker, you realize that the extension officers in this republic have very, very low morale. These people are depressed. They have economic worries. And therefore, this reduces on their output. Mr. Speaker, you realize that the government has, over the years, reduced its capitation or the share of revenue to the Ministry of Agriculture with regard to livestock, fisheries, and that line of operations. And this leaves our people, who are the human resource in the agricultural sector, not able to do what they ought to do. There's also a discovery that many of those people, and current ones, when at the grassroots level, those who were not recruited properly have issues with communication skills, gaps in how to communicate to the local people in the best terms possible, and therefore it hinders service delivery to the expected people at the grassroots level. The extension officers, Mr. Speaker, you realize that the terrains and the infrastructure of roads in the country, some areas is wanting. And therefore, if you recruit a depressed, low-morale extension officer to go to regions that do not have good roads, you have bandits, they are not paid, these people will not waste their time going to such areas where they are sure there is no transport. There is no communication network to deliver messages, information, and therefore it affects the communities at that level. My experience as well at the grassroots level, Honorable Speaker, is because of them not well enumerated. It means they visit those people who are financially able, because these people have a tendency of appreciating them for a job well done. But if people seem not to have money, they are equally struggling in life, whether you call or send please call me's, the extension officers will not blink to look at your direction. And therefore this means in your bill and in any other legislation that will come at the county level and national level, we must ensure that these people are properly enumerated, properly facilitated in terms of transport. We must ensure there is connectivity in terms of mobile network coverage so that these people do their best jobs. The extension officers, as my senior youth leader said, they must be well trained in all spheres of agriculture, so that whenever they go out to the field, they have the technical know-how, the modern way of farming, so that we move our farming to the next level. Finally, Mr. Speaker, if these people don't have the competencies, such as knowledge, skills, and attitudes that facilitate the expeditious adjudication of what they have been trained, we end up not delivering according to the expectation. Finally, we have farmer training colleges across the country. These facilities are not properly funded by the county governments, neither the national government. These are the institutions that are supposed to train these people at the local level, be able to carry out extension services and training platforms for farmers in those particular areas. If we are not going to fund those places properly, where the extension officers are going to be trained, it is going to have a negative impact on the agricultural sector. Finally, when people are being recruited to be extension officers, what are they looking for? We might find that people who have failed to get opportunities in the fields and are not trained in any sphere of agricultural sector, they are being recruited to suit political interests, to suit clan interests, to suit regional interests. It must be very, very clear that the extension officers in the line of agriculture must be able to be competent, qualified, and able to deliver in that kind of operation. Mr. Speaker, I want to thank you for this opportunity. And Tabitha, you have been congratulated by my senior youth leader. Know that your stakes are high. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Siango Kalunda Beth.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I also rise to support this bill by my sister, young sister, Tabitha Motinda. Many have said, and I would want to echo the same wordings, that agriculture is the backbone of the economy of this country. And so it is very important that we take agricultural and Livestock Extension Services very seriously. And I want to say that, Mr. Speaker, extension services help to improve the agricultural productivity through providing farmers with information that helps them to optimize their use of limited resources. It is very important that we need to reach farmers at the grassroots. Mr. Speaker, having extension officers is like a way of devolving services to reach to the grassroots, reach that farmer who is at the grassroots, maybe may not even travel to look for services further from his or her village, but when we have extension services, this is devolving the services nearer to the farmers. Mr. Speaker, this will help in variation in management practices and husbandry skills among small-scale farmers in Kenya. And it is very key. Congratulating my sister again for this bill, which is very important. When I was growing up, it was a common practice to see extension officers coming to our homes to guide on what methods of farming we should apply. Considering where I come from, it's dry and we don't have reliable rainfall. And because we don't have reliable rainfall, it's important for farmers to be guided on which farming methods to use and how to use the little resources that farmers have so that they may have optimum produce. Mr. Speaker, I remember in 1982, though I was young, farming systems that were established. Allow me to mention a few of them, like use of rapid rural appraisal, which was very key. Participatory rural approach, PRA. Focal area development approach, farmers field schools. These are very key. And it's only with the use of extension services that these farming systems can be applicable and can be used to ensure there is impact to the lives of farmers, to the productivity of our agricultural produce. And it is important that this bill has come at the right time. I hope that it's going through because we are supporting it. And once it becomes law, then we are going to improve our agricultural productivity. I know those in the government will say it is their agenda. Yes, but it is the agenda of the entire country that we must feed our population. It is the duty of any government to feed their population. Mr. Speaker, use of agricultural extension services will encourage even young minds to embrace farming. Because we know there's a lot of unemployment. The rate of unemployment in the country is very high, and we may not be able to get white-collar jobs for every young person who is growing up. If our people are encouraged to do farming and do farming in the right way, they will embrace farming, they will know it is a source of income, and they will take it as a source of employment or job. But when we leave it to the outgoing generation or the old people, and the young people are not involved in doing agriculture, we are doing disservice to our country. Mr. Speaker, at one point before I joined this House, I was working with an NGO, and I partnered with the Food and Agriculture Organization. And there was a program that was, we were establishing school gardens in almost every primary school and nearby secondary schools, where we intended to involve the young pupils and students in farming, so that they may embrace it, not to see agriculture or farming as a dirty thing, as a job for the uneducated and unlearned, but a job or an activity that can earn somebody living and that they can involve and also have what we call agribusiness, and they will further their lives and live better lives. Mr. Speaker, I want to say it is very important that we all support this bill, although there are areas that I would request my sister to look at and do amendments. Actually, as some of my colleagues have stated, these agricultural extension officers are not employed. They only are given maybe something like a retainer, and they charge farmers some fee when they come around. And because of the poverty index in our country, most of our farmers may not have even money to pay them. And that's why they cannot even consult them. So they rely on what they do and what they are capable of doing because of poverty levels. And this makes the extension officers then demoralized, demotivated, and that's why they cannot even do their work with some enthusiasm. So I would request that my sister consider amendment of whether request or putting a clause that will encourage the county government to employ these extension officers so that they have source of income. They are facilitated to travel and crisscross their villages and the wards where they are assigned their duties to do with some motivation that they feel they are doing an important thing, because agriculture is very key in this country. With those many and few remarks, Mr. Speaker, I say thank you and I support the bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator Beth. Senator Veronica Maina.
Mr. Speaker, thank you for the opportunity to contribute to this very important debate on the bill that has been presented to this House by Senator Tabitha Mutinda, whom I congratulate for taking a step to propose a legislative bill, Mr. Speaker, that would impact on, I believe, on all the 47 counties in our country, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, very importantly, 33% of Kenya's GDP is dependent on agriculture. And Mr. Speaker, research has also shown that 40% of the population in Kenya is engaged in some form of agriculture, and therefore it becomes the backbone, which has been cited by all the senators who have contributed to this debate, Mr. Speaker. Now, the future of this nation lies in how best we manage the agriculture sector, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, if we continue to do things the same way we have been doing them in the agriculture sector, it will be very difficult for us to expect different results if something does not fundamentally change. Now, Mr. Speaker, what I see in this bill is the reaffirmation and reintroduction of a service that was being offered when a number of us were way younger than we are right now. Mr. Speaker, when we were growing up, we saw the extension officers come into our villages, timely fashion, and invited by the farmers, Mr. Speaker, and they took an interest in the crop that was being put in those farms, Mr. Speaker, the livestock, Mr. Speaker. They took interest in the activity that was happening in the farm. They checked issues of soil erosion, Mr. Speaker. The first person that I heard talking about soil erosion, Mr. Speaker, before we were taught in an agriculture class in the primary school and later in the high school, Mr. Speaker, was from an agriculture extension officer, as he explained to my parents how they needed to take certain measures, Mr. Speaker, to prevent soil erosion. We learned in those early days, Mr. Speaker, that we needed to plant trees, we needed windbreakers, something they were calling windbreakers, that were able to prevent the movement of soil, the fertile clay soil, which is topsoil, and which was better positioned to give good produce and yield a good crop. Mr. Speaker, the Ministry of Agriculture should right now, Mr. Speaker, be in a position to roll out to Kenyans a service that supports the farmers in the rural sector to be able to make Kenya food sustainable, like the many nations which have managed to achieve this goal, Mr. Speaker. I have in mind nations like Israel, where water is even very scarce, Mr. Speaker, but the management of that resource and very productive agriculture has helped that nation to be food sustainable. And Mr. Speaker, there is no way we can say we would move to a developed economy unless we manage to sort out the issues and cover the gaps that are in agriculture. Looking at the bill proposed by Senator Tabitha, Mr. Speaker, I've looked at the objectives of the goal, and I have seen that part of the goals is 3B, is to promote the generation of high income for farmers and traders through increased production and sourcing of competitive markets. It sounds like a very loaded function of this bill, Mr. Speaker. And if you just look at the use of the sourcing of competitive markets for the produce that the farmers are having, Mr. Speaker, it pains my heart to think of the milk that I have watched the Nyandarua farmers pouring because they were not in a position to do value proposition or do value addition to this milk, Mr. Speaker, convert it maybe to cheese or butter and become the net exporter of those products, milk products, to the region and also to the world, Mr. Speaker. So I'm looking at how even the crop that is generated or any produce that is generated from agriculture, Mr. Speaker, can be tackled under this objective. What I would propose to Honorable Senator, who's done a good thing to propose this bill, is to see how you enrich such a clause such that it is capable of now helping the farmers to have an ecosystem or a structure, an infrastructure that improves the markets, the access to markets. Because if farmers in Kenya have access to markets, Mr. Speaker, or are able to store the food during the harvest time, then we can talk about having enough in our storage that can then sustain during the dry season, Mr. Speaker. I have also noted, Mr. Speaker, that there are many legislations in this agriculture sector. For instance, if you go to the tea sector, you find there is a host of legislation, Mr. Speaker. And I'm looking at the link between this bill and the other legislations, because, Mr. Speaker, what I'm seeing here is a wide framework that would manage and control the whole agriculture sector and have capacity building done for the farmers across the whole board. So when I read, Mr. Speaker, and I found that the bill only concentrated maybe the mention of the mung beans, which is a good thing because we can do an improvement on the mung bean, I asked myself whether if there was an amendment to include other species of beans, other crop that may not be having any framework, any legislative framework, whether that would enrich the bill or whether that would make that bill a little better and a little easier for the farmers, Mr. Speaker. I have also looked at the provisions that have been put for the technology part of it, Mr. Speaker, because as we very well know, now with the IT being developed as it is and the fiber optic having been supplied to our country, we can take advantage, Mr. Speaker, and ensure that any upcoming legislation now commits the government at both levels to supply the use of technology to farmers, Mr. Speaker, so that they can share in the information that needs to be shared across the board, Mr. Speaker. And then, of course, that brings the issues of whether the farmers do have smartphones or what kind of a system would we have. Would we have spaces, the digital spaces that are provided in the markets? Can they be provided near the farms where farmers can access this information? And how best can that information then be harnessed and sent down to the rural, up to the rural places, Mr. Speaker, where agriculture is actually happening, Mr. Speaker. The other thing that I have seen that would need maybe to be addressed by the bill when it comes to the competitive markets, The issue of brokers who have a way of, even after all these efforts are put, there is a legislative framework that is coming to support the farmers and to affirm the capacity building for our farmers through the extension services. How then do we tackle the brokers under this legislation, Mr. Speaker? Are there any clauses that manage that sector of how crop is moved from the farmer right up to the market? The value chain, Mr. Speaker, how do we manage that value chain such that even after putting efforts at the production stage, then we still have those efforts replicated when it comes to the markets and when it comes to competitive markets, Mr. Speaker, and using all available channels to ensure that farmers can access markets without any hindrance from the brokers, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, my take is that this is a very good bill. If all the proposals that have been given, Mr. Speaker, can be taken on board through amendments, Mr. Speaker, then it would be clear that we would have a better scene within the agriculture sector. And I want to look at section 27 that provides for the fund of this service, Mr. Speaker. As I was reading the provision under section 27, I'm asking myself whether this fund is administrative or whether this fund goes down to, say, subsidies to farmers, Mr. Speaker. If you are talking about improving productivity, the fund is silent because it talks about monies appropriated by Parliament for the purpose of the service. Such monies or assets may accrue to or vest in the service in the course of the exercise of its powers or the performance of its functions under this act. Is there an objective put down specifically for the support of farmers? I see as though that is lacking under this section. And you know, in our nation, Mr. Speaker, what is not provided for in law is not given. If it's not provided in this bill, then it will leave gaps which will be questioned, and somebody reading these provisions may as well interpret and say that the fund that is envisaged under section 27 is an administrative fund for the running of just the services themselves without having to think of other products. So, Mr. Speaker, maybe the bill would be more enriched, and I would propose an amendment to enrich it and to be bold and talk about subsidies, if at all the intention of improving production intends to take into consideration any subsidies that may be needed by farmers. Why am I talking about subsidies, Mr. Speaker? Because I know in most of the developed economies, Mr. Speaker, governments are very careful how farmers do their crop farming. In fact, they either have insurances that cover any crop failure, or the government moves in very fast for the big farmers to ensure that any investment that is done towards that farming or agriculture, Mr. Speaker, becomes supported in the event something has gone against nature and caused the crop to fail or caused the produce not to be as anticipated, Mr. Speaker. So I would challenge Senator Mutinda to consider the propositions that have been done and consider amending and enriching some of those provisions so that then we can be very clear what the governments are supposed to be doing. And finally, Mr. Speaker, I want to comment about the licenses. There is a proposal that the county governments would be the ones that would be dealing with the licensing. Now, you know, when you talk about licensing in Kenya, one of the purposes of licensing anywhere in the world for any government is to also raise fees and to regulate a sector. I think the licensing is provided for in this bill under section 26(2)(b). So what kind of fees, Mr. Speaker, and I think Senator Uhuru Odinga has insinuated to this, what kind of fees are we looking at? Is it not in order that if we are talking about licenses, then it presupposes that the county government will raise the revenue using licensing fees? Do we then need to introduce a principle which then says that that license must be accessible and affordable and should not exceed a certain limit, because the farmers we are dealing with, Mr. Speaker, are not those large-scale farmers that we see in other nations, but these are farmers who are mostly small-scale farmers, peasant farmers, people who are beginning at a very low level, Mr. Speaker, and farming very small chunks of pieces of land, Mr. Speaker. So it's important that if we are introducing, if the bill is introducing a licensing principle and giving powers to the county government to license, we may as well provide an amend to provide for the principle under which those licenses will be done, Mr. Speaker. And then, Mr. Speaker, finally, is to say that the licenses that are anticipated in this bill are not clear. What kind of licenses are we talking about? Is it in the management of the crop? Is it in the marketing of the crop? Is it in the production? Or what is the licensing that the bill intends to impose? Because if we are once again not clear about the licensing and what needs to be licensed, you might find a rogue county government coming up with a license saying that if you want to grow a certain crop, then you must come here for a license in order for us to allow you to grow that crop. Or we want to control the produce or the kind of production or the quality of a certain crop, Mr. Speaker. So it's important that it specifies the nature of licenses, because I'm sure the drafter of this bill, or the proposer of this bill, being Senator Tabitha, has in mind a certain form of licensing which they are targeting under this bill. But otherwise, Mr. Speaker, this is a very good bill, a very good bouncing base where if amendments are introduced based on the discussions that have been done by the senators or the debate that has been carried out in the afternoon today, then, Mr. Speaker, we will have a much better sector in agriculture and livestock extension services. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you,
I
Senator.
support.
Thank you, Senator Veronica. Majority Whip. Senator Boni Halwale.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to support this proposed bill, and I want to use my time to convince the mover of the motion that this is a very good idea, but we can make it better. Mr. Speaker, this bill must be read with the Constitution of Kenya. The Constitution of Kenya, Mr. Speaker, has already clearly indicated that the function of agriculture is domiciled in counties. And therefore, Senator, when you propose a bill of 33 clauses, and only one clause, clause number 26, is the one that speaks to counties, then it means this bill will once again give the national government an opportunity to frustrate devolution. I want to request the member, while working with the committee of JLAC, to consider calling this bill the County Agricultural and Livestock Extension Services Bill. And that being the case, Mr. Speaker, sir, I want to convince, most politely, the mover of the bill that in clause 8, where you are establishing, where you are giving the functions of the board, any mention of the word national, any mention of the word cabinet secretary, any mention of the word principal secretary should immediately be substituted in this bill with the word county, county executive committee member to replace the cabinet secretary, and the principal officer who is the equivalent of the principal secretary at the county. the chief officer. Mr. Speaker, in this bill, the mover is trying to give qualifications to two people. The first one is the CEO. So when you ask us to ensure that the CEO should be a holder of a degree recognized from a university recognized in Kenya, that's all very well. But at this time and age, we should be saying which degree. Because when you open it to CEO, you're going to find a lawyer becoming the CEO of this board. We want to insist that the CEO should be somebody with relevant information, and this should preferably be a holder of Bachelor of Science degree in veterinary medicine or in agriculture. So that is somebody who is conversant with this field. Madam Speaker, in this bill, they are asking that if you are a member of that board, you should hold, again, a degree. You do this, you are now inviting people from Nairobi to go to Trans Nzoia and be in charge of a board, and be in charge of functions which they least understand. So, because farmers are not necessarily people with higher education like Crystal, with higher education like Mumo, Wambua, we should ease it down and say at least a diploma, so that we can attract these people who live in the rural areas to be sitting on this board. So what is more, the board which is created in this bill is supposed to be domiciled in Nairobi. Why would a board presiding over matters in the countryside be presided over in Nairobi? Mover of the bill, let me give you our experience as the people from the sugar sector. Our board, the Kenya Sugar Board, which was disbanded, was domiciled here in Kabete, Nairobi. And they had no idea what our farmers were going through. We were actually in the process of ensuring that the board ends up in the sugarcane belt. So for purposes of this bill, we should not have a national board. We should have 47 boards that are at every headquarter of the county government. And the appointments being made by the minister here, they be made by the governor. Madam Speaker, in conclusion, I wanted to make my contribution very pointed and short. In conclusion, I just want to make a rider. There is, in the spirit of the Constitution, somebody called a county administrator, a sub-county administrator, somebody called a ward administrator, and even a village administrator. Governors have complied, and they have employed people who have become a militia. All those people are doing administrative services. If you go to a village and you are sitting in a funeral, they introduce the assistant chief, and also they introduce the ward administrator. Then they say the same things. We should align this thing so that this beautiful role is now domiciled in the current village, ward, sub-county, and county administrators. So that the money wasted on creating a militia for people to salute the governor, these days they're even in uniform, that resource can automatically be used on the same people, only that they will be purposely recruited to perform this very important function of extension services. Madam Speaker, I am a farmer, and I know there's money in farming. I hardly spend 5 days without seeing my dairy cows. And if somebody who has got such a little time like me, I'm wasting my time going to look at my animals because I'm trying to be a good example of the Ikolomani Dairy Farmers Cooperative Society, because I'm leading them by example. If there was an extension officer doing the civic education that I'm doing by way of example, then I would do more useful work in Nairobi, and if need be, I will then employ people on my dairy farm to be doing that away from myself. So because we are not orientating our children very well, our children think that farming is for people who are either in retirement or who are about to retire, or for the older generation. I can bet my last dollar in this house, or shilling. I was speaking about the white man's language, I tell you, it's terrible. I can bet my last shilling that my kid sister, Catherine Momo, her 5 children have never thought about farming, never. Mungatana is even worse. They have never thought about fishing. Yes, and hunting crocodiles. I see my children, and I've quite a number of them, I see them hovering in cities, doing funny jobs in cities. None of them has ever tried to understand what it is that causes the father to go home not less than 5 days in a week. So this mindset, because children are visiting us in this house, they are reading more about legislation, let them find that the laws we have made in this house have made farming attractive even to the so-called SUVI youth, the ones who are on the cutting edge of technology. Madam Speaker, with those remarks, I want to appeal to the President of Kenya from the floor of this house. I hope he's listening. One of the reasons why subsidized fertilizer had challenges, it is because we were using members of the provincial administration to do distribution. But if the government had this structure in this bill, where we have extension officers, the extension officer will make sure that there is enough fertilizer, enough to reach out to his maize farmers, to his dairy farmers, or whoever is that is using those facilities. Madam Speaker, my apologies to the mover of the motion. I have made too many proposals, but if they make sense, think about them. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I support.
Thank you, Senator Boni. Let me call Senator Enoch Wambua to contribute.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I stand to support the bill. I will have very few remarks to make. First of all is to congratulate the mover and the proposer of the bill for thinking about the important role played by, I would appreciate if the Senator of Kitui County could be heard in silence, Madam Speaker. There's a lot of activity around the Speaker, I don't know. And I thought Senator
Wambua, you know that is the proposer of the
Yeah, I thought she would benefit from my contribution.
She could as well be saying something very serious about it.
I thought she would benefit from my contribution. Perhaps it's not needed. Yeah, so.
That Abida, you better concentrate on the views.
So, Madam Speaker, there is a reason why the drafters of our Constitution in the 4th schedule listed agriculture in part 2 as the first devolved function for county governments. There's a reason. The reason, Madam Speaker, is because of what I have heard a few of my colleagues make reference to, that we are attempting to move the direction of industrialization, but before we get there, Kenya is largely an agricultural country, and we must accrue maximum benefit from the function of agriculture. And because farming takes place in all the 47 counties, my thinking is that the drafters of the Constitution wanted a situation where our country will move away from making reference to a food basket to making reference to food baskets. So we produce different varieties of foods from different corners of the country, and then we equip the county governments in the 47 counties properly to produce enough for themselves and surplus to sell to other regions. Madam Speaker, whereas I appreciate the decision or the move by Senator Tabitha to create the board, my only fear is that that board may serve to speak against the spirit of decentralizing agriculture. Because that board is too Nairobi-centric, if I can say it. And then what that does, those of us who were born many, many years before Senator Tabitha was born, we remember something that Moi called the District Focus for Rural Development in the 1983. This was a policy shift where the former president decided that we cannot be sitting in Nairobi to make decisions about villages that we don't understand about. So let's go back to the villages and make decisions from there. Around that time, there was an explosion in the recruitment of extension service providers. That's the time that they bought a lot of motorbikes, DT motorbikes, Yamaha, to move around and educate farmers on farming and all that. Senator Mutinda, the promoter of the bill, and the committee to which the bill will be assigned, I implore you to rethink the board. Rethink the board and ask yourself whether you don't want to transfer those functions to county headquarters. Article 20, no, clause 26 of your bill, which is actually the only clause that speaks to devolution. It's the one that speaks to devolution. But then again, I'm reminded there is a cabinet secretary who is now a governor. When things became a bit hot, she said she wanted light duties. You have assigned very light duties to counties. Just implementation of policies crafted and passed by the board at the center. Why don't you think with the committee of assigning real responsibilities to county governments to recruit and assign extension officers? In which case then, the duties of licensing, and I heard the speaker make a contribution, and I agree with that totally. When we talk about licensing and issuance of permits for agricultural extension service providers, what exactly are we talking about? Are we looking at the private sector doing this service? Because my understanding was we were going to put an obligation on government, county governments, to recruit officers to provide services to the farmers. Because if then we are talking about issuing of permits and licenses, then it means then we are encouraging private sector players to come in, and then they have to be paid by farmers who may not be able to afford the services of those extension service providers. On the issue of part 2 of your bill, you know, Madam Speaker, when you're making your contribution, I almost rose on a point of order to invoke Standing Order 99 on a dispersion of debate, because I did not know where you were coming from. But then I looked and realized there was a lot of reference there to mung beans, mung beans. Now, I don't know that this is an anomaly of the promoter of the bill, or it is the officers that helped her, yes, to draft this bill. Madam Speaker, in serious jurisdictions, I would be headed to the courts now to sue